Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the insights that truly matter. Imagine just for a second you're a doctor, maybe a researcher, and you're trying to understand something really personal, really crucial about a patient, maybe their pain after an operation, or how a chronic condition is really hitting their quality of life. So you give them a questionnaire, right? One of these things we call patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs. But how do you actually know? How do you know those questions are hitting the mark? Are they capturing the real picture? Or is it just sort of incomplete, maybe even misleading? That's the big challenge we're getting into today. This whole world of patient-reported outcome measures, PROMs, and specifically one really vital piece, their content validity. It sounds simple maybe, asking the right questions, but it's probably the trickiest part to get right. And our mission today is to unpack this really interesting methodology called COSMIN. It's this consensus thing built by experts from all over the world, trying to standardize how we check if these prompts are actually valid.
We're going to explore why this matters so much for you, for patients, for healthcare generally, and how they manage to bring some real clarity to a, pretty complex area. Okay, so let's just start there. What exactly is content validity? Why is it such a big deal for these prompts?
Yeah, it's absolutely fundamental. Basically, content validity boils down to three things: relevance, comprehensiveness, and comprehensibility. Is the PROM asking questions that are actually relevant to what you want to measure, say, fatigue, not just general tiredness? Is it comprehensive? Does it cover all the important aspects of that thing, like all the ways fatigue might affect someone? And, crucially, is it comprehensible? Can the patient actually understand the questions and the answer choices the way they're meant to be understood?
Right. If they misunderstand, the answer is kind of useless, isn't it?
Exactly. It undermines the whole point. It refers to the relevance, comprehensiveness, and comprehensibility of the PROM specifically for the construct, the target population, and the context of use you're interested in.
And it's really striking how our source material emphasizes this. It literally says, content validity is often considered to be the most important measurement property.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge statement, right? More important than, say, reliability. Why single it out like that?
That's a great point. It's because everything else kind of hinges on it. Think about it. You could have a questionnaire that gives you super consistent results every single time, really reliable. But if it's reliably measuring the wrong thing, well, it's reliably wrong. It's like having a scale that consistently tells you weigh 10 pounds less than you do. It's reliable, but it's not valid for measuring your actual weight.
Ah, okay. So bad content validity poisons the well for everything else.
Precisely. It compromises all the other measurement properties you care about. Things like internal consistency. Do the questions hang together? Structural validity. Does it measure the concept it claims to? Interpretability. Do the scores actually mean something? Even responsiveness. Can it detect real changes in a patient's health? All of that becomes questionable if the content validity isn't there from the start. You might end up measuring something incomplete or just wrong, really reliably. And a real change in what you wanted to measure might get missed, or maybe overestimated because you're asking irrelevant things or missing key concepts.
And what about the patient side of things, filling these out?
Yeah, imagine being asked questions that just feel irrelevant to your experience. Or maybe the thing that bothers you most isn't even mentioned. It's frustrating, right? It can lead to biased answers, maybe people just rushing through it, or even dropping out altogether. Low response rates.
Which means your data quality suffers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that has real consequences for clinical decisions, for research findings. It's why regulators like the FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe really stress how important this is.
So it's not just good practice, it's foundational. You've got to establish this content validity before you even bother testing other things like reliability. It's step one. You can't build a solid house on, shaky ground. Okay, so if it's this fundamental, this important, but also tricky, how on earth do you standardize assessing it, especially across different countries, different contexts?
Yeah.
That sounds like a massive challenge. Is that where COSMIN came in?
That's exactly where COSMIN came in. It stands for Consensus-Based Standards for the Selection of Health Measurement Instruments. It was this huge international effort to, nail this down. Their goals were pretty ambitious. First, develop standards for evaluating how PROMs are developed in the first place. Second, update their existing standards specifically for judging the quality of content validity studies. Third, actually define clear criteria for what good content validity even looks like. And fourth, create a system to rate the evidence in systematic reviews.
Okay, so building a whole framework. How do they do it? How do you get experts from everywhere to agree on something so complex?
They used a method called a Delphi study. It was all done online over 4 rounds. They brought together this really impressive panel, 159 experts from 21 different countries, a lot of brain power.
Wow.
Yeah. And in each round, these experts would rate proposals for the standards, the criteria, the rating system using a 5-point scale. But crucially, they didn't just vote. They had to provide arguments, reasons for their ratings.
So the why was just as important.
Absolutely. Consensus was defined pretty strictly, at least 67% agreement, meaning panelists either agreed or strongly agreed. And because it was iterative, the steering committee could take all that feedback, revise the proposals, address the arguments, and send them back out for the next round. It's a really powerful way to refine ideas and build genuine consensus.
I bet there were some pretty lively debates behind the scenes during those rounds. The source mentions things like sample size requirements, recording in field notes, transcribing cognitive interviews, data coding. Why would those specific details cause such debate?
Well, they get right to the practicalities and the rigor, don't they? Take sample size for patient interviews. How many patients do you really need to talk to be confident you've captured the key issues? There's a balance between getting enough input and making it feasible. Or recording versus field notes. If you record an interview, do you still need detailed notes taken right then and there? Some argued recordings capture everything. Others felt notes capture nuances, body language, things a recording might miss, which are important for understanding comprehensibility.
Okay, yeah, I can see how those details matter a lot in practice.
Exactly. These weren't just academic quibbles, they affect how you actually do the work of assessing content validity properly. But the key thing is, after those 4 rounds, after all that back and forth, they did reach that 67% consensus on everything. All the standards, the criteria, the rating issues, and the result was 10 clear criteria for what defines good content validity.
10 criteria.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so for you listening, what do these cover? Broadly, it seems like they hit 4 main areas, right? Are the questions relevant? Are the answer choices and the time frame they ask about appropriate? Is the whole questionnaire comprehensive? Does it cover everything important? And finally, is it comprehensible? Do patients understand it like they're supposed to?
That's a great summary. It's really holistic, and we can dig into those a bit. Take relevance. It's not just one thing. Is the item relevant for the construct? Like, are you really asking about depression, not anxiety? Is it relevant for the target population? A question that makes sense for adults might not for children, or maybe for people with cognitive impairments. And is it relevant for the context of use? Are you using this PROM to screen or to measure change after treatment? That affects which questions are relevant. You need all 3 types of relevance.
Okay. What about comprehensiveness?
That's about making sure all the key concepts that matter to patients are actually included. If you're measuring quality of life after a stroke, but you only ask about physical function and ignore mood or social interaction, well, that's not comprehensive from the patient's view, is it? Something important is missing.
Definitely not. And comprehensibility.
This is vital. Are the instructions clear? Are the questions themselves worded simply? Are there confusing terms? And do the response options, like a scale from 1 to 5, actually match the question and make sense to the person answering? You can't just assume people understand. It needs testing.
What really jumps out here is the level of detail. It's not just what you ask, but how and who you're asking and why. It feels much more rigorous than just, writing some questions that seem okay.
Exactly. And COSMIN provides the tools to assess this rigorously. They have these detailed standards, one set for evaluating the PROM development process itself, that's box 1 in their papers, and another set, box 2, for evaluating the quality of specific content validity studies. Think of them as checklists, but really detailed ones.
So if I'm using these standards, say reviewing a study about a PROM, how do I rate it? Is it just pass-fail?
No, it's more nuanced. You use a 4-point scale for each individual standard. Very good, adequate, doubtful, or inadequate. So you get a pretty fine-grained picture. But here's a key part, a really strict part. The worst score counts rule. This was a conscious choice. The idea is that you can't compensate for a really poor aspect of a study just because other parts were done well.
Okay, so one big flaw can pull the whole rating down.
That's right. If a crucial standard, say, how they involve patients in checking relevance, is rated inadequate, then the overall rating for relevance quality takes a serious hit, even if other aspects were very good. It ensures a high bar. You can't average out a critical weakness.
That makes sense. It prevents glossing over significant problems.
Mhm. And it's interesting, looking back at the Delphi process, you can see how some ideas evolved, like that debate about field notes versus recordings. Initially, the consensus wasn't firm on needing notes if you had recordings, but through discussion and testing, the value of those immediate contextual notes became clearer. And another really big one, maybe the philosophical core, was this emphasis. Patients are considered the primary experts regarding PROMs. That wasn't just a nice phrase.
It had teeth.
It really did. It led the steering committee to insist that comprehensibility must be evaluated by patients themselves, not just healthcare professionals guessing if patients would understand. Even when some panelists initially thought professionals could judge it, the patient's direct input was non-negotiable for that aspect.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and another example for really large item banks, huge lists of questions, the initial consensus was maybe you didn't need full comprehensiveness. But pilot testing showed, no, actually, even for these big banks, they need to comprehensively cover patient concerns. So the steering committee adapted based on that real-world testing, even overturning the initial Delphi vote. It shows the process wasn't rigid, it was responsive.
So patient-centeredness wasn't just a buzzword. It actively shaped the standards. Okay, so you use the standards, you've got your ratings for individual studies.
Oh.
How do you synthesize all that? How do you get to an overall judgment about the PROM's content validity?
Right, that's the next stage. COSMIN lays out a clear three-step rating system, perfect for systematic reviews. Step 1. You take those 10 content validity criteria and rate the results of each individual study for each criterion, sufficient, insufficient, inconsistent, or indeterminate. So you get a detailed scorecard per study. Step 2. You synthesize those individual study ratings to make an overall judgment about the PROM itself. You come up with an overall relevance rating, an overall comprehensiveness rating, an overall comprehensibility rating, and then combine those into an overall content validity rating for that specific PROM.
And what if different studies disagree?
Good question. If you see inconsistencies, maybe one study found it relevant for population A, but another found it wasn't for population B, you have to explore why. Maybe the populations were different or the context of use. You might end up giving ratings specific to certain populations or contexts, or just clearly flag the inconsistency. Then, step 3, and this is super important, you grade the quality of the evidence supporting your overall ratings. This uses a modified grade approach, which is a standard method in healthcare. You rate your confidence in the overall content validity rating as high, moderate, low, or very low quality evidence.
So you're not just saying it's valid, you're saying here's how confident we are that it's valid.
Exactly. You look at the risk of bias in the studies you reviewed, how consistent the findings were, how directly the evidence applies. You start assuming high quality and then downgrade based on any serious limitations you find.
That seems incredibly useful. It gives you a really transparent, structured way to compare different PROMs and make recommendations, especially for researchers or clinicians choosing which tool to use. You know the strength of the evidence behind its validity claims.
Precisely. It takes a lot of the guesswork and subjectivity out of it, but, and this is important too, COSMIN emphasizes it's not a rigid cookbook. Reviewers still need to use their judgment, their methodological knowledge, their clinical expertise. That's still crucial when interpreting the evidence within this framework.
It guides judgment, it doesn't replace it.
Well put. And it all comes back to that core philosophy we touched on. The patient is the primary expert. The quality of a PROM fundamentally depends on getting adequate input from patients throughout its development and testing, because they're the ones living the experience you're trying to measure.
Yeah, that message comes through loud and clear.
And just to clarify one technical point that sometimes causes confusion, within COSMIN, things like statistical analysis, factor analysis, item response theory, those aren't considered part of content validity. Ah, okay. Where do they fit in then?
They're seen as separate important measurement properties like structural validity or internal consistency. And the key is they should really be evaluated after you've established solid content validity. Get the content right first, then check the stats.
Got it. Foundation first.
Exactly. So this whole updated COSMIN methodology, it replaces older, less detailed guidelines. It's now part of their main risk of bias tool. And the bigger picture here, this work can really help ensure that the PROMs used in research, used in clinics every day, are genuinely high quality, that they accurately capture the patient's voice.
So we've really dug into this COSMIN methodology today. We've seen how this huge international effort brought some serious rigor and transparency to checking the content validity of patient-reported outcome measures. From those 10 criteria to the rating system, it's all designed to make sure these tools actually reflect patient experiences. What really stands out to me after all this is how that meticulous, consensus-based approach, getting all those experts to hash it out, could take something so potentially subjective and turn it into something reliable, actionable, and truly centered on the patient. That's quite an achievement. Which leads us to our provocative thought for you to chew on. Given how absolutely central patient input is here, this idea of the patient as primary expert, how else could we apply this principle in healthcare? Think beyond questionnaires. What are the parts of care? Maybe treatment design, clinic workflows, even how health technology is built. Where else could this deep, patient-centered validation make a real difference? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.